Our story for all ages today is a Buddhist-inspired take on a classic fairy tale, the story of Jack and the Beanstalk. It's called Be Here, Cow. Once upon a time, just outside of a village in England, a boy named Jack lived with his mother in a very modest home in the countryside. Jack and his mother were poor, but they had each other, and their cow Bessie, and some chickens, and they were happy. But every day, Jack had to chop the wood for the fire and go down to the river to fetch water, and oh, how he grumbled about those chores. One day, Jack's mother said, "Jack, I need you to go into town to pick up some supplies. We don't have any money, but we can trade for it. I need you to go get Bessie." "You want to trade Bessie?" Jack interrupted, upset. "Don't be daft, Jack," his mother said fondly. "You didn't let me finish. Go get Bessie's portrait, which I painted in watercolors just this morning. It's on the mantle. It must be worth something." So Jack got the painting of Bessie and headed off to town. And along the way, he met an old man by the side of the road. "That's a mighty fine watercolor," said the man. "Would you be willing to trade me for it?" "I'm supposed to trade it in town for some supplies for the winter," said Jack. "Well," said the old man, "what if I told you I'll give you a handful of beans for it?" "Beans," said Jack. "What do I want with beans?" "They're magic beans," said the man. "Magic beans. What do they do?" asked Jack. "That's for you to find out," said the old man. Burning with curiosity and excitement, Jack traded the watercolor of Bessie for the magic beans. He ran home as fast as he could to tell his mother. "Mother, I traded your painting for some magic beans." "Huh," said his mother. "I did not expect you to go in that direction. Well, plant them in the garden, I suppose, and don't forget to chop the firewood and fetch the water while you're at it." Jack planted the beans, and then, grumbling all the time, he did his chores. The next morning, when Jack woke up, he could hardly believe his eyes. Those magic beans had grown overnight and grown and grown and grown. From out of the garden, there was a beanstalk as big around as a tree trunk that stretched all the way up to the sky. "Well, will you look at that?" said Jack's mother. "Can I climb it?" asked Jack eagerly. "Chop the wood and fetch the water, then you can climb the magic beanstalk." So Jack did his chores, grumbling all the time, and then he jumped right on that beanstalk and started climbing, using its leaves and branches just like a ladder. He climbed and climbed and climbed until eventually he climbed that beanstalk right above the clouds. Up above the clouds, Jack was astonished to see a road that went off into the distance to meet a giant castle. And he was so curious that he went right up to the door of that castle. And it really was a giant castle with a giant door, so big that Jack found that he could easily slip right through the crack underneath. Inside the giant castle, there was a giant room with a giant stove for warmth. There was a giant kitchen table and chairs, giant bookshelves, and just generally giant everything. Jack was still taking all this in when he heard a regular-sized voice say, "You'd better get out of here." The voice was coming from a harp in the corner. It was a harp made of gold, and it talked. "You'd better get out of here," said the talking harp. "The giant will be coming soon, and he doesn't like strangers." "Are you a magic harp?" asked Jack. "No, I'm a regular talking harp," said the harp. "The giant stole me and keeps me locked up here to play lullabies for him every day." "That's not nice," protested Jack. "I'm going to get you out of here." But just then the terrible booming sound of the giant's voice thundered through the castle. "Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell something wrong." "Hide," said the harp. So Jack hid under the table. He was as small as a mouse in comparison to the terrible giant, who sat down in a chair and began to eat breakfast. But then the giant stopped and sniffed the air. "Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell something wrong. If I catch an intruder in here, you will never leave." Jack motioned to the harp to begin playing, And straightway the harp strings sang with the softest, gentlest lullaby you ever heard. The giant closed his eyes dreamily to the sound of the harp, and within a few minutes he was snoring away, sound asleep. As careful as could be, Jack tied the giant's shoelaces together under the table, and then he snatched up the harp and he ran for the door. "Thief!" The giant snapped awake in an instant and sprang to follow Jack, but he tripped over the tied-together shoelaces and fell flat on his face. "Give me back my beautiful harp!" the giant cried. In a flash, Jack climbed down the beanstalk, practically hurtling himself from branch to branch with the harp bouncing on his back. When he reached the ground, he grabbed an axe and he chopped down the beanstalk before the giant could follow. "Goodness, what was that all about?" asked Jack's mother, looking at the harp and the toppled-over beanstalk. Jack explained breathlessly all about the castle and the giant and the harp. "It was the most amazing thing that's ever happened to anyone anywhere," Jack said. "Well done, Jack," said Jack's mother. "You're curious and compassionate and brave. Oh, you make a mother proud." Jack beamed. "Now it's getting late," said his mother. "You'd better go chop the wood and fetch the water." "Mother," Jack protested, "how can you even think about chores at a time like this?" His mother replied, "Jack, today you learned that the world is a bigger place than you ever imagined, much bigger than our little farm. Your life will probably never be the same, but every life is lived out one moment at a time. And in this moment, your mother would like a cup of tea. So, chop the wood and fetch the water," Jack finished for her. "There's a good son," said his mother, "and don't be too long about it." The harp played songs while Jack got the firewood and the water, and then Jack and his mother had their afternoon tea on the porch. Jack learned that even the most extraordinary life is made up of ordinary moments. The giant learned a lesson about not getting attached to things. Jack's mother watched the clouds pass by in her tea, and the Bessie the cow grazed in the yard, all the while being perfectly mindfully present to the grass and to the chewing in her humble cow manner. That is our story for today. Thank you for sharing it with me. Our sermon today is Holding the Breath Lightly. I don't know if any of you are fans of the show Parks and Recreation from like way back in the early 2010s. It's a show about the employees of a parks department in a fictional small town in Indiana. And one of the characters on the show is a very no-nonsense, like manly man kind of guy, doesn't talk about his feelings, conservative guy named Ron Swanson. And in the show, the parks department gets a new boss from the big city of Indianapolis, who's a sensitive new age guy named Chris. Chris is all about health and wellness and like being in touch with his inner feelings and his inner self. And Chris decides that Ron needs to join him on a day-long meditation retreat if he's ever going to reach his full potential as an employee. Now, this is about the most horrifying proposition that Ron Swanson can imagine. He just wants to be left alone to like sip whiskey and fish and carve wooden furniture. But he also realizes that he can't get out of it. He asks a coworker who has experienced the meditation retreat what exactly he is in for. And she tells him, "It's crazy boring. It lasts forever. You're going to wish you were dead. Just do it." So they arrive at the meditation center, which is actually in a strip mall. The participants adopt a traditional, lotus position on pillows. Chris invites Ron to join them, and Ron says no thank you. He will remain standing. So they all begin serenely meditating, while Ron stands behind them, like with his arms crossed, refusing to participate. Afterwards, Ron reports back to the camera about the experience as though he's being interviewed about it, and he says, "All told, we were in there about 6 hours, and no, I was not meditating. I just stood there, quietly breathing. There were no thoughts in my head whatsoever. My mind was blank. I don't know what those other people were doing. So the joke, of course, is that this is exactly what meditating is, or what people suppose it to be. Sitting quietly, breathing, while clearing the mind of all thoughts. Meditation is quieting the mind, and if we are doing it right, it is stilling the mind, maybe even silencing the mind. You're probably all familiar with the concept of the monkey mind, right? The unceasing stream of thoughts and words and images and memories that flows through our awareness all the time, sometimes under our control, more often stubbornly resisting our efforts to tame it, forming a kind of tumbling, free associating soundtrack to our experience of the world. When we learn to meditate, the idea is we learn to tame the monkey mind so we can enjoy a respite from its ceaseless chatter and experience peace. This is the popular idea. Now, UUI has a daily meditation group that meets Monday through Friday, every day at 10 a.m. on Zoom. It's been meeting for 2.5 years now, since March 23rd of 2020. And basically, the way that went down is the church, along with the whole rest of the world, shut down for COVID on Sunday, March 15th. And on Monday, March 16th, I said, "Holy cow." That's my Canadian Catholic grandmother's strongest imprecation. Holy cow, we are going to need to do some meditating. We're going to need some spiritual tools for what lies ahead. So I bought a book called Secular Meditation by the Harvard Humanist Group, a bunch of atheists and skeptics out of Harvard who meditate together. It was like meditation for people who aren't really sure they buy this whole thing, but they need this whole thing, this inner peace, serenity, compassion thing. It's meditation for Ron Swanson. And I reread my copy of The Miracle of Mindfulness, which is a classic meditation guide by the Vietnamese Zen Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, which gives his approach to mindfulness or breath meditation. And then I fired up the Zoom and I hit record and we just started meditating. I say we, but for the first week, really, it was mostly just I. And then it was like a few we, and then a few more and a few more. And at the height of the pandemic, somewhere after year one, it was not unusual to have about 18 UUI people meditating together on Zoom on any given day of the week. And today, we still regularly have 10 to 12 people. We meditate for half an hour, and then we check in with each other. And the check-in has been at least as important as the meditating in helping people feel connected and supported through some tough times, particularly during the most isolating parts of COVID. We still meet Monday through Friday. New people are welcome. Drop-ins are welcome. Anyone can come join anytime. The Zoom link is in the e-blast, or you can email me. There's also recordings on our YouTube page. So we started with mindfulness meditation or breath meditation, and this is a very simple form of meditation. You just focus on the breath. You don't have to breathe in any particular way. You just get comfortable. You want to adopt a posture that is relaxed but alert. The goal is not to fall asleep. You close your eyes if you want, or you just focus on a distant spot with kind of a soft gaze, and you breathe while following the breath with your awareness. Just keep noticing the flow of the breath in and out of the body, in through the nose, out through the mouth is recommended, and you just breathe. Noticing the breath. And if you do this for even just a few minutes, and especially if you practice this semi-regularly, you will most likely find that over time your body learns to just kind of drop into a calmer, more relaxed state fairly quickly when you begin this kind of focused breathing. Your mileage may vary, but it's a very useful tool to have. But for me, it isn't like the blank slate that Ron Swanson describes and that I had assumed that meditation was meant to be. My mind can very happily chatter on even as I try valiantly to keep my awareness focused on the breath. I notice the breath. I notice my noticing of the breath. I think that I should not notice my noticing of the breath. And I notice that I am now thinking about meditating instead of meditating. I gently bring my awareness back to the breath. I remember I need to email someone. Should I write that down real quick? Is it cheating? Is it cheating, or will I meditate better if I just write that down real quick? I should write that down. I return my awareness to the breath. I am not good at meditating. There's no judgment. I return my awareness to the breath. Remember that scene in Star Trek II when Kirk tricks Khan into lowering his shields? That was cool. I should watch that on YouTube when we get done with this meditation. Will I forget that? I should write that down. I gently return my awareness to the breath. Oh my God, I am the worst meditator ever. I gently return my awareness to the breath. Now, the Harvard book recommended a simple counting technique to help keep the mind focused on the breath. And it's really simple. You count 1 on the in-breath, 1 on the out-breath, and then 2 on the in-breath, 2 on the out-breath, and then 3, 3, 4, 4, like that. When you get to 5, start over. So counting in cycles of 5 gives the brain something simple to focus on, something a little bit more to hold on to, and it helps. I find it very relaxing, but I am also remarkably good at chattering away underneath those cycles of 5. It turns out I can multitask. And I've learned since that there are lots of counting techniques. Some people count 1, 2, 3, 4 on the in-breath, 4, 3, 2, 1 on the out-breath. You can imagine that you are drawing the sides of a square with the breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. I've learned that if you extend the out-breath, that is particularly good for anxiety. So for example, there's a 4-7-8 breathing pattern for anxiety, which you can Google, but basically breathe in for 4, hold for 7, breathe out for 8. If you get dizzy, stop. I don't mean stop breathing, but stop breathing in a pattern and just allow the body to reset to your natural breathing. And I love these techniques. I love them. But none of them really stop the monkey mind. Sometimes the monkey mind slows down a little. I never reach the blank slate, the still mind. Now, from Thich Nhat Hanh, I learned that when your thoughts intrude, as they inevitably will, you just observe them. Without judgment, you say, oh, I'm thinking now. And then you redirect back to the breath. And we're invited to be relaxed and compassionate with ourselves. Oh, I've strayed from the breath. No big deal, back to the breath. And in that way, I learned to be relaxed and compassionate about the fact that I cannot keep my mind on the breath for 1 stupid second, not even 1 stupid second, because apparently I am the worst meditator in the history of thinking back to the breath. Now, the technique that gets me closest to a quiet mind, and I think I must have gotten this from Thich Nhat Hanh as well, is to really narrow the focus of my awareness down even on the breath. I focus my awareness on the in-breath just at the point where the breath flows into my nostrils, and on the out-breath just at the point where the breath flows out between my lips. And that is all I am trying to notice, just those 2 points. And if I focus on that pretty intensely, the chatter will recede. I mean, maybe it doesn't recede all the way, but the inner monologue becomes more like the voices of the adults in the Peanut cartoons, right? That kind of distant wah, 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 wah. I don't know what you call that technique. Nostril meditation doesn't sound very appealing, right? Maybe like 1-point focus meditation. That sounds a lot cooler. And I practiced this a lot in the first year when I was really focused on trying to get to that quiet mind. Because my unquiet mind at that time had a lot of thoughts about COVID and insurrections and shutdowns and things that I wanted to break from thinking about. Was it even possible to get to the silent mind? I was skeptical. But if I practiced every day and got really good at focusing down on the breath, could I hypothetically get to like a whispering mind, like a library mind? And I imagine this was like a clamping down on the breath, right? Just holding it in my concentration with such a tightly controlled focus that no other awareness could enter. And sometimes it worked. Now, there's a book I started reading about this time by a Buddhist teacher named Pema Chodron. It's called When Things Fall Apart, Heart Advice for Difficult Times. And I wasn't reading it to learn about meditation. I was reading it because my UU minister colleagues all recommended it as a good resource for pastoral care. It was a book they recommended to people going through hard times, people coping with loss or grief or illness and so on. And it isn't a book about meditation per se. It's a Buddhist spiritual approach to life. But in the book, Chodron described her own teacher's approach to meditation, her teacher's approach, and it surprised me. Now, Chodron is all about discipline and regular practice and is fairly prescriptive in a way that I have never attempted or aspired to be with my Harvard Skeptic's Guide to Meditating, if you want to call it that. Right? She is a serious meditator, but what Chodron taught about breath meditation is to hold the breath loosely in the awareness, to hold it lightly. She says to hold it with about 1/4 awareness, consistently aware of it, but not at all trying to force out other awareness. One should be aware of the body, of one's surroundings, and of the shenanigans of one's monkey mind. Not at all like the no mind that I was striving for. Her teacher sometimes described the process as touching the out-breath lightly with the awareness and then letting it go. Touching the out-breath lightly with the awareness and then letting it go. And with the in-breath, don't even worry about the in-breath at all. Don't do anything with the in-breath. Touch the out-breath lightly and let it go. And of course, thoughts will arise, lots of thoughts, right? We're sitting still, doing nothing, holding the breath gently in our awareness. What else is there to do but think? Thoughts will arise. Ideas, worries, complaints. We will notice the breath. We will notice the ache in our side. We will notice the breath. We will notice that we forgot to call our mom. We will notice the breath. How long has it been? This is boring. We will notice the breath. I'm hungry, and notice the breath. Chodron writes, in meditation, we discover our inherent restlessness. Sometimes we get up and leave. Sometimes we sit there, but our bodies wiggle and squirm and our minds go far away. She says it goes against the grain to stay present. These are times when only gentleness and a sense of humor can give us the strength to settle down. She says, so whenever we wander off, we gently encourage ourselves to stay. Like other instructors, Chodron advises us when we notice ourselves thinking to gently say, thinking, and return to the breath. But the purpose, as she describes it, is different from how I was using it. In Chodron's approach, the thoughts that arise are not a failure of meditation or a distraction from meditation or an interruption of meditation. They're the point of meditation, or at least one point of meditation. In this view, the meditation process is not intended to silence the self. It puts us in touch with the self, with where we are at right now. The thoughts arising, this is who we are right now in all of our messy human glory. Our cares, our worries, our loves, our distractions, our ego, our striving, our fears, our silly chatter even, it's all us. And so we pause, we sit, we close our eyes, we focus on the breath to create space to connect with who we are, where we are right now. We meditate to experience ourselves with clarity and honesty. And then this is why we greet each arising with the word thinking and return to the breath. Because this arising that we witness inside ourselves is who we are, but also not who we are. It's just thoughts. The worry that grips us is not reality, it's just thoughts, thinking. The shame of some past memory, it's just thoughts. The irritation, just thoughts. The brilliant idea, just thoughts. And so Chodron encourages us to encounter these arising parts of ourselves with a cheerful friendliness and a curiosity, right? We don't have to take them so seriously. It's just thinking. And we return to the breath as a reminder that who we are is different from any of these arising things, and so we don't have to identify with them. She puts it this way: you are the sky, everything else is just the weather. And then because we are not taking this so seriously, because we are holding the breath lightly, holding the spirit lightly, we can be more present to these parts of ourselves. It's not so threatening. When we can hold the experience of ourselves as gently and lightly as we hold the breath, we can sit with those experiences. We can experience them fully with compassion, with curiosity, even with humor. Chodron says, when you open yourself to the continuously changing, impermanent, dynamic nature of your own being and of reality, you increase your capacity to love and care about other people, and your capacity to not be afraid. You're able to keep your eyes open, your heart open, your mind open, and you notice when you get caught up in prejudice, bias, and aggression. Maybe because you're not afraid to notice it. Now, there's an obvious correlation with our Universalist theology, the theology that says we don't have to earn our worth or our own value, right? We are enough now, just as we are, as imperfect beings. We are worthy of compassion as we are, and we are not limited to how we are. This is the weather, and we are the sky. We notice what is arising from our past, from the imagined future, and the breath returns us to the present, where we are held by a love that is greater than any of those things. Now, humans are creatures of memory and imagination. Our minds are free to roam untethered through time. This is a blessing and a curse. We can speculate, imagine, reminisce, remember, but we can also live in the future in a state of worry and control. We can live in the past with gratitude or of ruminating and regretting. But God is here in the present with the breath. God is in this moment, acting in this moment. And God may not be a word that resonates with you theologically, so here is a different framing. Love happens in the present moment. Creativity is in this moment. Transformation happens in this moment. Kindness and compassion, the energies of life and renewal, they happen in this present moment. When we say yes to life, that yes finds its expression in this moment, the moment of our breath. And all of these things happen through our present, imperfect self, just as we are, just as we are. Chodron says meditation practice isn't about trying to throw ourselves away and become something better. It's about befriending who we already are. Our Universalist theology agrees. Whoever we are in this moment, this is what love has to work with. And as it happens, it's enough. And so I invite you, whatever your spiritual practice is, whether you meditate or pray or do yoga or walk or garden or draw or sing or whatever it is that connects you to your spirit, hold your spirit lightly. Encounter yourself gently with friendliness and humor. Be honest with all of your multiplicity, all your imperfect arisings, and then return to the breath, your constant connection to this present moment. Breathe in, knowing you are held in love. Breathe out, returning love to the world. Breathe in, knowing you are held in love. Breathe out, returning love to the world. As simple as that. Blessed be, and amen.